see your bright and sparky faces out there, alive and smiling. I can almost see you, Steve, in the dark back there. Your future is now is kind of an imposing title, but I'm going to use it anyway. I'm going to talk around it. Actually, so much has come to me as we were sitting here through all of you, and it's interesting how things all tie together. Mrs. Taylor was in church one Sunday, and after the program was over, the Reverend was out there shaking hands, as they usually do, with the congregation, and she started walking over to the door, and she decided to turn around because she really didn't want to shake hands with the minister right now. Some things going on in her world, and they caught each other's eye, and he said, "Mrs. Taylor, come on over here." And she did, and he said, "You know, it looks like you've got a little stress on your face. I think there's probably something going on in your world. What's happening?" She said, "Well, you know, it's Johnny and Billy. They're getting into a lot of mischief lately. They've been taking a few things. Matter of fact, they've been taking quite a bit." He said, "You mean they're stealing?" She said, "Well, I guess you might call it that. Would you talk with him?" He said, "Well, have him come in after school tomorrow, and I'll talk with him." So after school the next day, little Johnny and Billy walked into the church, and big lobby, long lobby, stained glass windows, the sun's coming in, 2 chairs at the very end. Johnny and Billy sit down. The secretary comes out and said, "The minister will be with you shortly." So a few minutes later, she comes out and she said, "Johnny, come on in. We're going to talk with you first." So little Johnny walks into the minister's office, very imposing office, bookshelves stacked with books, statue of Jesus there, and the minister sat down behind his desk and said, "Johnny, where is God?" Johnny was fit to be tied. He didn't know what to say. He was nervous. The minister said in a louder voice, "Johnny, where's God?" Well, beads of perspiration started pouring off this poor little guy's face. He didn't know what to do. The minister sat there at the desk, put his elbows on the desk, put his glasses down. He said, "Johnny, where's God?" Well, with that, Johnny leaped out of the chair. He ran out of the lobby. He said, "Come on, Billy, let's get out of here. God's missing, and now they're going to try to pin that on us." Okay. The statement is, "With all thy getting, get understanding." You've heard that before. Psychologists and psychiatrists alike have shared that 1 out of every 3 people have some kind of problem with their business, their relationship, or their financial situation. 1 out of every 3. Those are pretty high odds. Now, I'd like you to take a look at the person sitting on your left. Just do this. Okay, look at the person sitting on your right. Okay, now, if they look okay, that's you I'm talking to. So if you tune in just a little bit, we're going to give a quick overview of life which has existed on this planet for the past 3.5 billion years. And we'll give another quick overview of the life that will occur in the next 3.5 billion years. Mind you, a very quick overview. Here's the statement. Everything in the universe is happening now. Past, present, and future. Now that's going to demand, Karen, another program. Won't talk about that particular aspect now. But what can we do as it stands now, as it relates to us now? All right, I'll give you a couple of thoughts. Everyone raise your arm and wave your hand once before your body. You've just altered the future. You see, the future responds to your command, physically and mentally. When you move your hand, the universe moves. It's subtle, but it's inevitable. It's called the ripple effect. And when you move your mind, we're talking major ripple and massive change. The problem in today's world is most people don't move their minds very far. Albert Schweitzer was once asked, what's wrong with people today? He said, people just don't think. Now that's certainly not the case here this morning, but I would invite you to expand your thinking because we're going to talk about your future. And it's interesting to note, when you know the future, it's not that difficult to figure out what to do in the present moment. We've all experienced it. It's called hindsight. But flip it around. When you know the present moment, where you are, how you feel, what your finances are like, how your relationships are going, it's not that difficult to predict the future. And we all have one. Actually, we have several. We have a probable future, and we have several improbable futures. Now, the probable future is when I finish this talk, we'll all rise from our chairs and we'll go to our respective locations. The improbable future is when I finish this talk, we'll rise from our chairs and we'll go to the airport, we'll board a flight for Europe and spend the next 30 days on the French Riviera. That sounds like a good idea to me. But, wait a minute. I could have to restate that statement because there's a man sitting back there, Steve Knoll. He runs ACT tours. He could schedule all of us to go to the French Riviera today if you so chose. So maybe that's not as improbable as one might think. But the question I want to ask you is, what does your probable future hold for you? In 2044, in 2034? What new inroads will have taken place in the human experience? Will you have embraced the new technologies? Imagine the possibilities that await us. An explosion of information is moving us into the future. Some of us kicking and screaming. We can be pushed, we can be led, or we can step forward with confidence. The choices we make will influence our journey. Remember, it's all happening now. I don't know if you're familiar with Thomas Troward. Has anyone ever read the works of Thomas Troward? A few people here. This book has been tattered and scarred. I've had this one for a long time. Thomas Troward puts things in a way that it's hard to avoid the concept that he's actually presenting. Thinking about this in your own terms. He said, he's rather lengthy in this. He said, we must always bear in mind that we're dealing with a wonderful potential energy which is not yet differentiated into any particular mode of activity. And by the action of our mind, we can differentiate it into any particular mode of activity that we will. And by keeping our thought fixed on the fact that the inflow of this energy is taking place, and by the action of our minds, we are determining its direction, we shall gradually realize a corresponding externalization. That's a long way of saying what you think about comes about. Yeah. But it does give the point. I do like his work. I highly recommend it. This is a great book. It's second only to mine. Leadership above and beyond the crowd. All right. Van Dyke, a while back, put it this way. We create our fortune, thought by thought, for so the universe was wrought. He said, thought is another name for fate. Joe, choose then your destiny and wait. For love brings love, and hate brings hate. And it all operates by law, and there's not that much allowance for ignorance. I'm going to say that I believe life intended every individual to succeed. I think it's life's purpose that we should become great. I think it's life's will that we should not only use but enjoy all the good that the universe has to offer. This universal power denies us nothing. We mess it up. We put the wrong pictures in our mind. Because every emotionally stable person is endowed with a complete set of faculties, which, if properly developed and scientifically applied, will ensure ever-growing success in health and wealth and happiness. I believe that's true. How do we think about ourselves? I would say that it's looking for expansion, fuller expression, for more, for greater. It's never for lack, disease, decay, or discord. It's always for more. Now, I want to share a short story with you. And you're probably going to be quite surprised with the moral it has to offer. Dana and I, my wife Dana, and I, where's my Dana? She's the gal who keeps me going. 47 years ago and so far. So that's pretty good. We were in Portland, Oregon. And we were getting your grand tour of Portland, Oregon. How many have been to Portland, Oregon? It's a great city. It's a city of bridges. I mean, we were getting a grand tour of Portland by Ruth. Remember Ruth, the redhead, bubbly personality? Well, she got us in the car and we started going, she wanted to go over the bridge, under the bridge, over the bridge. Well, we couldn't get on the bridge because she was going the wrong way. It's a one-way bridge. We were on the off-ramp, on the off-ramp, on the off-ramp, off the on-ramp. Finally, we got into the downtown area, 9th and Yam Hill. And the Guild Theater was there. And The Day the Earth Stood Still was playing. How many have seen The Day the Earth Stood Still, the first classic 1951 movie with Michael Rennie and Patricia Nealingort? Just a few of you. Well, Dana had not seen the film. I said, you've got to see the film, it's a classic. So we got back to the Red Lion Inn, we're staying at the Red Lion Inn, and I called the theater up and I said, what time does the movie start? They said it starts at 6:15. Well, it was 5:45. So I called the bellman up downstairs, and I said, can you have a cab here in 5 minutes? He said, sure, no problem. So we got downstairs at 10 minutes to 6, there was no cab. 5 minutes to 6, there was no cab. 6 o'clock, there was no cab. I was getting a little worried because a flying saucer lands in the beginning of the movie. You've got to see the beginning. Well, just then, this Bentley automobile pulled up. It was chocolate brown in color. It was gorgeous. The chauffeur got out, walked around, and he opened the door for these two lovely couples. They were dripping with opulence, and they walked into the hotel like this. You know how they walk, right? I said to Dana, come on, there's our cab. Well, the bellman ran up to me, grabbed my arm, he said, wait a minute, sir, that's not your cab. Your cab is yellow. And I said to myself, why can't we go downtown in the Bentley? Why does everyone always try to tell us what we can't have in life? So I went outside and I talked to the driver. I said, there's this science fiction movie, Mike, the guy's name was, remember Mike? Yeah. I said, there's a science fiction movie, starts in about 5 minutes. We've just got to see the beginning. Could you drive us down to the Guild Theater? And he was leaning against the high Bentley fender, and he said, sure, why not? So we got in our Bentley and we drove away. And he drove up to the Guild Theater and he stopped right in front of the box office. There were 10 people in line. I counted them. He turned around and said, "We're here." I said, "I know." He said, "Well, aren't you going to get out? You're going to miss your movie." I said, "Well, aren't you going to open our door for us?" After all, we're all riding in a Bentley. He said, "Okay, I'll play your silly game." So he got out of the car, he walked around, and he opened the door, and this lovely couple emerged. I said, "Thank you." I tipped him handsomely. He sped off into the night. We got in line. We got our tickets. We saw the movie. And get this, when we walked outside of the theater, there was the Bentley. He said, "Your car, sir." He picked us up from the theater. He drove us to McCormick and Schmick on First and Oak, a little seafood restaurant. We had a delightful seafood dinner. He picked us up from the restaurant, drove us back to the hotel. The bellman was still standing there looking out the window. He shook his head and he started walking away. What I didn't know, and what the bellman didn't know because he was new on the job, and what probably none of you know, is that anyone could have had a ride in the Bentley. All they had to do was ask.
Oh, wow.
It was a courtesy car for McCormick and Schmick restaurant. You see, folks, this is a mouth. And if you want anything to happen in life at all, you have to be willing to open it up just a little bit. The prodigal son. That's my version of the prodigal son. You know the story about the prodigal son, where the son asks his father for his inheritance, and he squanders it recklessly and lives the life of indulgence. And then he goes back home after years. His father greets him with his other brother, and he notices his other brother. He's dressed in fine garments. He's got his Tesla sitting in the driveway. He's got a home up on the hill. He's educated. He's got a wonderful job as a CEO of a company he started. And the young guy who went out to live the life of indulgence says, "Dad, you've given everything to him. You're not giving it to me. Why not?" He said, "Son, all that I have is thine. You never asked." What aren't we asking for in life? That's my moral of the story. Your future is now. We are making our future now. Francis Bacon put it this way. He said, "Begin doing what you want to do now. We're not living in eternity. We have only this moment, sparkling like a star in the sky, resting in our hand and melting like a snowflake." I have a little final word. You know, I like these teabag tag quotes. Good Earth. How many of you like these little teabag? Some of them are pretty worthwhile. So I'll end with this. Life is a cup of tea. Life is like a cup of tea. It's how you make it. You're too kind. Absolutely too kind. Joe, you come up.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
My. One more time.